Welcome to the Automation Show. My job here is to interview the real life champions from all walks of manufacturing and eke out, bring about the routine, the thoughts, the process, the formulas, what they have been using so that you can use in your life and in your organization. I have a very special guest today, who is one of my favorites. Mr. Rajesh Nath, Managing Director of German Engineering Federation, VDMA India chapter. I personally think what Harsa Bogle is to commentary, Rajesh Nath is to manufacturing and networking. हरिवंश राय बच्चन की एक कविता है, लहरों से डरकर नौका पार नहीं होती, कोशिश करने वालों की कभी हार नहीं होती. Mr. Rajesh Nath is a living example of that. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rajesh Nath.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'll start by asking a very intriguing question. How would you summarize your last 25 years with VDMA and what has it meant to you?
First of all, thank you, Dr. Sanjeev, for having me on this show today. It has been my 25 years of journey with VDMA. I would say if I were to summarize it in a couple of words, I would say it has been a very fulfilling and satisfying journey. There has been a lot of learning, a lot of networking, I think, and it's been amazing the various number of people one has interacted with. So I think the journey is going, and it is going in the happy direction, I would say.
What an incredible journey. What is that, or what are key significant achievements that you are really proud of?
So I think, Dr. Sanjeev, when I started with VDMA, actually, hardly anybody knew about VDMA. So I think what we have achieved in this 25 years is to make VDMA in India as a meeting point for the industry, be it the German industry, but also the Indian industry. And it's like we've been like a glue which has been able to attract our members to come together. And we as VDMA have always strongly believed that there's so much of potential of business among the members also. Either they can be suppliers to each other or customers to each other. And I think that is what we are trying to achieve, is getting the members together on a common platform at VDMA.
I think very true. And you have really played an important role in establishing that connect between India and Germany, and quite incredible. If I were to ask you that, is there anything that you regret in last 25 years, or what's something that you would wish that, you could have done something differently?
I think the only regret I would have, to be honest with you, is because of my work-related activities, I've not been able to spend time with my family. So I would say I'm very thankful to my wife, who has undertaken most of the responsibility. So certainly one regret would be I have not really been able to devote much time with my family or seen my daughter grow up. So I think this remains one of the regrets that I carry with me, Dr. Sanjeev.
No, I think a big salute to your family, because they may seem at the backroom staff, but they are the front room staff. Without the help and support, it's very, very challenging to do things. So you have had an incredible 25 years. What's still one thing that you would still want to do before hang your boots? What is still a dream that you want to accomplish?
I would say that there's still thrust and momentum, Dr. Sanjeev. Certainly, I think one desire I have is to, whenever I leave VDMA, to have a team in place which carries forward the work that we have done all these 25 years and more. So that is what we are looking at, the next rank of leadership coming. Also, the team being catering to the requirements of the members and carrying this legacy forward of VDMA, Dr. Sanjeev.
I think it's going to be very big boots for the leadership team, next generation to fill. but I'm also confident that you will be able to develop them to fulfill the ambition that you and the VDMA and the Indian manufacturers, German manufacturers have. You have worked very closely with German manufacturers, and German manufacturing is synonym with precision, quality. For Indian manufacturers, what one thing that they can learn from these German companies? What one mindset that they can adopt from these German manufacturers?
Right. I think the biggest one of the what you mentioned, the quality. Now, how is quality attained? Quality is attained through a process, and I think one of the cutting edge what the German companies have is the investment they do in R&D. Now, the investment in R&D is really helping the German technology to stay ahead of the competitors. And I think this is where in India, we also need to give enough focus on R&D. Unfortunately, our spending on R&D is much below the global average. India hardly spends 0.9%, whereas the global average is about almost 3.5%. So I think this is very much this consciousness about quality and the benefits of R&D that I think we need to inculcate in the Indian manufacturers.
So it's like a long-term thinking
That's
that
right.
I think
That's right.
you sow the seeds now and you reap the reward, the fruits later
Right.
on. But it's a mindset, isn't it? I think
Yes.
it's that mindset, because we always are hand to mouth. So we want to do stuff which we can produce and sell now, but keeping the long-term perspective. You have worked so closely with German manufacturers. If you were to describe them in 3 words, what would it be? How would you describe them?
I would say the 3 P's are so much applicable to the German industry. One is the people. They invest in the people, train the people so that the people have the right skill set. Then is the process. It's a very process-oriented industry. And third is the product that comes out of the combination of people and process. You have good people, you have good processes in place. So nothing can stop you to get a good product out. And I think these 3 P's would really identify the German industry.
It's interesting to know, because I consider you quite an insider there in, I think, when it comes to German manufacturing. It's interesting to know that 25 years ago, what they used to think about India, Indian manufacturing, and how has it evolved, and what's happening, what's driving that?
Oh, this is a very interesting question. Uh, Perhaps I'll share my personal experience here. I remember when I started with VDMA. So the export of German machinery to India was hardly about 500 million Deutschmark. That time we used to have Deutschmark. Right. And if you look now, we are at 4,300 million euros. So you could say it's almost been a 8 to 9 times increase over this period. We hardly had about, I would say we had around 200 member companies. Now VDMA has 600 member companies active here in India. The biggest difference was that time people used to ask, why do we need to come to India? The market is small. The market was small. There was not so much potential. And in this period now of 25 years, Dr. Sanjeev, it's no more, why do we need to come? Those who are not there ask the question, how can we come? Where can we establish ourselves in India? So the whole perception of India as a market has changed considerably in the last period.
And yes, that India is a market. What about their optics and perception of Indian manufacturers, Indian engineers, Indian product? How has that evolved? What was it before? What's it now?
Absolutely. I think there also we've seen a huge change or a huge difference. Even if we look at Indian engineering exports to Germany, in fact, in 2023, first time it crossed the 1 billion euro mark. So it has also increased. We are seeing an increase of almost 18% year on year in Indian engineering exports to Germany. Wow. So accepting the Indian products, I think this has now become much more widespread in Germany. And a good development also, I think, Dr. Sanjeev, has been the geopolitical tensions have also led to German companies who were very much dependent, for example, sourcing from China. Now they want to de-risk themselves from China, and India offers a good potential. So many of our members also, we are seeing their sourcing activities in India have increased. There are certain companies who are manufacturing certain products or components, which Indian entity has been called as a center of excellence for these products. And these products or machines are being exported globally for the various subsidiaries of these companies. So I think this is a huge evolvement of the Indian industry in the eyes of the German companies.
I think it's a big change. And it's an India growth story. And as you know, I'm a firm believer that India would be the next manufacturing superpower. But still, yes, we have a long distance to go. I would like to know, because you are a veteran, somebody, you have seen everything. What is your take on Indian manufacturing, the health of Indian manufacturing now? What do you see? Where do you see it going? Not from, okay, a lot of journalists may write a lot of stuff, we may read a lot of stuff, but from the reality point of view, what is your take? How do you see?
Right. Of course, I think a big difference that has come is in the last, you could say, a decade or so, the focus on manufacturing. If we look, we have been largely before that, or if we look at, say, 3 decades ago, we've been an agrarian society. Yeah. So agriculture was the main driver. Then we leapfrogged to service sector. So somehow the manufacturing sector did not get that right focus as it should have got. Yeah. But now I think in the last decade or so, there's been a shift in the government thinking to give a boost to manufacturing. And it is very relevant also with the government programs of Make in India, or the government's vision that when India becomes a $5 trillion economy, manufacturing has to contribute about $1 trillion towards this growth. So I think there is now a perceived focus on manufacturing, which is also helping the Indian industry. So the contribution of manufacturing in our GDP is approximately about 16 to 17%. Yes. And the government wants to increase it to 25%. Yeah. Of course, it's a long way still to go. But I think we are in the right direction. The companies are also exploring the various options available. The orientation towards export is also increasing. And now also with the production-linked incentive scheme of the government, we are wanting to attract foreign investments to come and manufacture in India and then export out of India. So I think this will also help in increasing India's share in the global value chain. Dr. Sanjeev.
I think it's a very good point that you brought about. India manufacturing used to be very, very small portion of the overall GDP.
Yes.
I think right now, if our GDP is around 4 trillion, the manufacturing contribution is around $600 billion. Out of that, as you rightly mentioned, that the export to Germany has increased year on year. Overall, I think the market share for Indian exports in auto components is around 2%, which used to be around 1% 3 years ago. So it's a massive growth. From your experience, so from this 2% market share for Indian auto component export to go to, say, 5% in, say, next 2 to 3 years, what would Indian companies need to do, number one? Number two, even prior to that, do you think, is it achievable that can India go, the auto component manufacturer, go from 2 to 5%?
Right. A very, very interesting question. There is a lot of potential that we have, the Indian manufacturing, and especially when you talk about the auto component industry or the automotive industry. Now, the automotive industry is also changing, Dr. Sanjeev. We are moving now more and more globally. EV vehicles are becoming more and more popular now. So I think that is where the adaptability to these change circumstances, this is very important. Yeah. If we are able to grasp this, I think, and able to change to the products, futuristic products, have a foresight what is going to come in the future. And if we are able to manufacture such products, and I'm sure that the 5% mark, what you said, is something that would be achievable. Of course, we have to, quality remains one of the challenges in India. It's because we need to do a lot of work in training our people. Unless we are able to train the manpower to produce high quality products, I think this will remain one of the constraints for India's manufacturing. But with the various schemes also, we have Skill India scheme coming in. A lot of companies themselves are taking initiatives. So I think it is only what can restrict India's growth is our internal, if we are not following the processes. But otherwise, I think there is a huge potential in the market, and Indian companies can certainly reach out to that potential, Dr. Sanjeev.
So I think the key word that you mentioned, adaptability.
Right.
And looking at, what is needed and quickly being able to respond to that.
Absolutely.
From your experience, because I know for a fact that you go around and meet a lot of Indian industrialists, and you go to the shop floor, you have meeting with the CEOs and manufacturing heads. What gives you confidence that Indian auto component manufacturers would be able to adapt, to respond? Can you share something from your experience in the last couple of years which tells you that no, things are changing and you get more confidence?
Certainly, we have typical Indian companies now playing a big role on the global scenario, Dr. Sanjeev. Look at the Tata's group, or let's look at Bharat Forge.
Right.
They've got so many plants in Germany itself, more than 2 decades or 2.5 decades in Germany. Then we have JBM Auto also, who have, in fact, they have, I think now they have 18 plants in Europe alone, JBM Auto. So these are Indian companies which are really making a mark on the global scenario. And I think the biggest advantage of the Indian industry is our resilience. Right. I think the difficult circumstances that we face, perhaps none of the other countries would be facing. And to come out of these circumstances and be resilient to the requirement and bringing out products which fit into the global scenario and catering to the global requirements, I think these companies have really set a benchmark which will give a lot of confidence to the smaller companies also to increase their export. I would just like to perhaps highlight Coimbatore, for example. I really admire the spirit of entrepreneurship in Coimbatore. All Indian businesses, family-owned businesses. And in fact, I see a lot of comparison between Coimbatore and Germany, because German industry is also largely family-owned, mid-sized companies. So if you visit Coimbatore, you can really visiting these companies. I'm myself amazed how these companies maintaining a very low profile and how they have evolved and grown over the period of time and are contributing, in fact, to the global automotive industry also in a large way, Dr. Sanjeev.
Thanks for sharing that. And I can completely vouch for that. Last Friday, I was in Coimbatore.
Right.
And I visited a company, GD Weiler,
right.
who also had some association with the German industries as well. And you're absolutely right. I think even in a small place like Coimbatore, there are manufacturing companies, out and out engineering companies. You can see the kind of products they're building. You can see the kind of engineering that they have to put into, and they're also being practical as well. So I think these things do give me confidence. I wanted to get your reassurance as well. And I think, thank you very much for that. While we know that as a market, India is a big market and going to be a big market, and there's a potential, and these all talks of 4 trillion to 5 trillion to 10 trillion. We also have to be realistic and pragmatic about it. One of the important things for us to be manufacturing superpower is to become more competitive. And competitiveness comes from being highly productive and highly efficient. While a lot of people talk all the right words about efficiency, we still are far away from achieving the level of efficiency that we can. And you talked about German company, those 3 Ps. What is your take on efficiency levels in Indian companies? And what do you think that these companies can do, can focus on to improve their level of efficiencies?
Certainly, Dr. Sanjeev, the efficiency level presently, if we take the typical SME structure in India, Dr. Sanjeev, So the SMEs have a lot of restrictions or a lot of challenges at the moment. One point you rightly mentioned is about also they don't have such deep pockets. So adopting automation is a constraint in a large way. What we want to promote, or what I strongly propagate, is that, see, let's look at the example of Industry 4.0, for example. Now, there are certain aspects in Industry 4.0. It's not that it's like you should not consider it as a black box that either you take it as a whole or leave it. But for example, condition monitoring, remote monitoring. With these aspects, you can really look into the machine and get prior notice if the machine is going to be a failure of the machine. Now, this has more application for mid-sized companies or smaller companies than larger companies. Say for a larger company, he has enough resources. If the machine doesn't work for 2 days, he can bear the cost. But for a smaller or mid-sized company, if the machine failure is there for a few hours, it really hits him. Yeah. So that's why we say the company should really look at adopting low-hanging fruits, going step by step on the journey, and then drawing benefit, getting a high ROI out of that, and then going to the next stage. So I think this is where the mid-sized companies in India, or the smaller size, when we talk about SMEs, they need to evolve as in a phased manner it would evolve. Adopting certain aspects of automation which can really give them the improvement in quality, improvement in productivity, and training the manpower also, because you may have a very good process, but until the manpower is trained to adopt to the processes, you will not draw the benefit out of those processes.
Wow. Honestly, real word of wisdom.
Thank you.
And what you said, I can tell that it's very powerful and can be a blueprint for a lot of companies in India to adopt. Because majority of the manufacturing companies are going to be SMEs.
Right.
And they all want to grow. They all want to do better. But a lot of them need direction that where to start. And automation is a big word. Efficiency level is a big word. But as you rightly said, that they need to look at step by step automation.
Right.
Look at the low-hanging fruit. Right. Adopt them, because that might not require a lot of capital investment.
Absolutely.
May require a small investment, but more of a mindset. Right. So it'll go one by one level. And I think that's a very right approach, because when I go and see a lot of companies buys a lot of high-end equipment, a lot of robots, they are fantastic devices. And in one company, I asked them, so they basically put a lot of robots, right? So I asked them, okay, what is your scrap rate now? And I asked them can you be a bit honest?
Right.
So behind the scene, they say that the scrap rates have been increased rather than decreased.
Okay.
What happened that material handling device only will pick the component and place the component, pick up, place it.
Right.
But if your process is not controlled, you're going to increase the speed of the scrap. And essentially, as you said, that's why look at the things that you can control easily, simply, without too much of capital investment, and then work on that. So real word of wisdom and a blueprint. Yeah. And while we all feel very enthusiastic about India's story, which it is, and I'm a big believer, we are going to be the manufacturing superpower, but there's a reality that for last even 2 decades, we had all the talent, right? We had the market, we had the resources. Indians have always been very resilient and adaptive, but we have underachieved in last 2 decades. What do you think are the prime factors for us that has not worked? Why have we underachieved? Because it's important to know that if we can be honest with us, then we can grow. Otherwise, it will be just a jingoism. So what do you think? Why have we underachieved in last 2 decades?
What I would say is, Dr. Sanjeev, there's a very clear direction now. I would say perhaps there was not so much clarity on where to go and what to do. I think now there's a very clear direction, and I would like to compliment the government actually for coming out with such clear policies. I mean, it's very few countries would have such clarity 2027, 28, we want to become a $5 trillion economy. 32 or say 31, 32, we want to become a $10 trillion economy. And when you have this clarity in front of you, and where the manufacturing should be, what should be the role of manufacturing? As we said, 25% should be the contribution to GDP. So I think this is certainly one aspect that is helping the companies to focus more on manufacturing, even the government policies trying to support manufacturing. And second is, of course, I think India has really been able to, after the COVID. Now, many countries have really suffered after COVID. With our process we took the step of digital transformation. The digital transformation that is happening in the country is immense. What is happening. And I think all this is also helping in growth of the manufacturing industry in India. And the global markets, now certainly what we are seeing is there are a lot of with these uncertainties in various regions of the world, then the geopolitical tensions. This has given India a new boost to try to fill the gaps which are existing with certain countries. And I think this is the best opportunity we have now, and which we will have in the next few years. We should really try to utilize this opportunity. And I'm so happy that the companies are also now going more and more global. I think a big perception, again, I come back to the Coimbatore example. See, the companies have been 2 generations, 3 generations now. The first generation, second generation have helped to establish the domestic business. The third generation has studied abroad. He has more global outlook. And now this generation is really going very strong in trying to look at exports for the company. And I think this evolution, what we are seeing in India, in the new generation coming in with having a much broader and much global outlook, this will really help in the growth of the Indian manufacturing as well as the taking the Indian manufacturing global, Dr. Sanjeev.
So I think the key theme there is the direction.
Right.
So what you're saying, essentially, now we have a clear direction.
Right.
We have clear targets in place.
Right.
So that is driving clear objectives for people to achieve. And you're right, government is playing that role of setting clear-cut direction, and the entrepreneurs and the manufacturers and the key companies there have got clear targets and clear objectives.
Absolutely.
So that's the key difference, which was lack of, or which was not in that
so,
much, not so much,
yes,
say, in let's say last 2 decades.
Right.
I think you're right. So I think once the direction is there, then it is about getting your house sorted.
Right.
How would we achieve that, and how would we go into that path?
Right. I would just perhaps like to add that. So it's like a road, Dr. Sanjeev. A road has been built.
Yeah.
Now, how fast you travel on the road lies upon you. Yeah. But at least the road is there for you, and then you can accelerate on that road and go forward.
Yeah, I think very rightly said. So the road is there, the highway is there,
right.
And as if I connect it with your previous answer, that now you can have clear-cut milestones on those roads,
yes,
and put something in your vehicle to achieve those milestones at the time.
Absolutely,
fantastic. I read somewhere that I think you moderated a session, I think a couple of months ago, where the session was about India going towards 5 trillion economy, India targeting that in say next 2 to 3 years time. What were the 2 or 3 key takeaways from that session that you moderated that would be helpful for our listeners?
Surely. I think there is a lot of potential, that we have the potential to become a $5 trillion economy. The government has ease of doing business. We are able to attract foreign direct investments, more foreign direct investments coming into the country. And I think for the domestic industry also, with these programs of skilling, Skill India, and the various initiatives either being taken by the central or the state government, and even the companies, I think we are having the right parameters for the growth of our economy. And at the moment also, despite of the global slowdown, India is growing. Yeah. We are the fastest growing major economy in the world. And I think one of our biggest drivers is our own domestic market. The young population that we have a median age of about 28 years. Yes. And in fact, if we look at the next till 2047, India's population will continue to grow, and we will be one of the major manpower supplier to the world. Yeah. Many of the other countries, mostly the European countries, or even China, in fact, there will be a dip in the population. Yeah. Whereas till 47, India's population will continue to grow. So these are all the parameters which are very positively inclined towards India at the moment.
That's a very important point. We are the youngest population.
Absolutely.
And if we add to that youngest population, very resilient, very
talented
adapted,
also, yes.
and very talented. It's a rare combination. Right. And if there is a good market that we have,
right.
I think there will be, nobody can stop us to become the manufacturing superpower. Right. I go back to a few minutes ago, you talked about 1P, that is people. Right. And if we go further down, the driver for people is a mindset. Okay. Right. And you have worked with, I think now, thousands of engineers and at least 500 to 1,000 senior people. What is the winning mindset as per you? What is that mindset that separates from somebody being very successful with somebody who is not?
Very good question, Dr. Sanjeev. In fact, I always tell my team there is a very little difference between good and better. Who is good and who's better? The difference is actually not too much. But how would the better distinguish himself from good? So I would say it is that passion, that junoon. That is what will really distinguish the person from better and good. Maybe I'll just give a very small example of from my personal life, Dr. Sanjeev. When I was working in Germany, I had a senior person, a sort of a mentor. So he asked me, what time do you go to office? And Germany, people start quite early. So I said, 7:30 office starts. So I'm there at 7:28, 29, I'm there. He says, okay, 7. So everybody must be, I said, everybody comes between 7:25 to 7. He says, how are you distinguishing yourself? You are one amongst the many. If you go to office at 7:10 or 7:15, that is where you stand out. Very simple example, but I think it brings a very strong message that how do you stand out? You can only stand out when you distinguish yourself from the other. And that is what is a slight difference between good and better.
Oh, I think very powerful. So there are very small things, but that can be very powerful. Right. You talked about passion.
Right.
So what drives the passion? Like, it's very, like, you must have seen somebody being very passionate and somebody being not so that passionate.
Right.
What drives passion?
I can talk about myself, Dr. Sanjeev. So one is identifying yourself with any task you're doing. It is not you're doing this task out of compulsion. It is doing a task out of love and trying to give your best for the task. That's why I always tell the youngsters, whichever task you're doing, be it small or big, do it with your full dedication and passion. It is not how good the others are doing. You try to do your best. Whatever potential you have, you try to put in your potential, and automatically the results will come out of it. But if you do it just because, say, the boss told me to do it, that result will be totally different. So unless you get fully involved, fully engrossed in that assignment or the work you're doing, the results can't come. That is my strong belief.
I think it's very powerful message. It's like Krishna's message in Gita. Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma
कर्म
करते रहो.
फल की जय. Yes.
बहुत लोगों ने सुना होगा ये.
Right.
Many people would have heard.
Right.
But if you look at the practical illustration, is that whatever you do, you love that. So when you love that thing, then you will do. Then you will take those action.
Right.
And you will not worry about whether this thing will happen or not happen. it's a very, very simple but very powerful thing if one can understand it.
And just one, maybe I'll just
Please.
add a last line to that. So I strongly believe that attitude determines your altitude.
I completely agree.
So whatever attitude you have towards that will actually determine your altitude, what you will reach.
Completely agree. And that's why I think these are some of the hallmarks, the fundamentals to success. Having a great attitude, having passion, do what you love. These are not so easy things to do as well. And if you were to ask me, attitude trumps talent any day.
Absolutely.
Because talent can be sporadic.
Right.
You cannot be control over talent, but you can control over your attitude and your hard work. Okay, now it looks so good that you have had a stellar career, 25 years, but I know that when you would have been starting 25 years ago, it must have been a very, very hard work. It must be sometime a lone warrior. And as you said, Indian manufacturing wasn't great that time. The market was just opening up. So I want you to talk about those years of struggle.
Right.
And also, how did you inspire the German companies to come to India? Because I think some insight from that could be useful for us in India, Indian manufacturing, because they would be facing the same thing when they have to export and go into some of the new markets as well. So can you talk about, from your example, some stories of the struggle and how did you overcome and how did all these things started to pan out?
Yeah. As you correctly said, that time, the whole perception towards India was very different, Dr. Sanjeev. So I think what we have tried to do is improve the perception towards India from the German companies. In fact, there were certain sectors like construction sector, steel sector. So trying to impress upon the German companies that India is going to grow tremendously in these sectors, energy sector, steel sector, construction. We have a huge country. Infrastructure is very much required in our country. And luckily, I would say also then slowly the government policies have also, like the government spending in infrastructure. Now, this has given us a big boost. If we look 10 years now to present scenario, the number of airports, 10 years back, we had 74 airports in India. Now we are at 152 airports. And we are also talking about till 2030, we will have 200 airports in India. The number of highways in the last 8 years have increased by 60%. India was building at the rate of almost 20 kilometers per day. So these are tremendous infrastructure developments we are seeing in our country. And this was to happen. So bringing the Germans, giving them that foresight that this would come in India. So look at these possibilities, look at these avenues and establish your companies. It's the first mover advantage you can only get when you start early. But if you join the herd, then the chances of success becomes more difficult. But if you lead the herd as the first mover, you get that advantage. And that is what we've been trying to impress upon the German company, to look at India as a manufacturing base. And I'm so happy that now with the passage of time, people have realized that. And not only manufacturing in India for Indian market, but also utilizing India for the global market. So these have been steps, I think, which personally have been very satisfying for me to see how the German industry has also developed over the period of time.
I heard the theme in the annual VDMA conference, India for APAC. So that was quite a powerful theme. Absolutely. And quite an exciting theme for manufacturing in India. But what you just said is easier said than done. So you have been able to sell this idea, convince this idea when there wasn't enough market. It's a remarkable stuff. So what will be your advice to Indian manufacturers right now? Let's say some companies in India who are making these auto components and they want to go and do the same stuff in Germany. How they should approach it? What are the steps they should do? Because I know these things would not be written in books. Nobody will teach them. So what would be your simple blueprint for the Indian manufacturers to grow export in, say, German market or other European market?
Very good question, Dr. Sanjeev, and I'm glad that you asked this. So I think if you look from the German perspective, two points or two characteristics the Germans are very particular about. One is quality, having quality product, and second is the commitment.
Okay.
I think this is what really distinguishes Germans from the others, is they're very particular about the commitment. If you talk about a delivery happening, say, by 15th of the month, the delivery should happen by 14th or 15th. They are not looking at short-term gains. The Germans always look at long-term relationship. And I think that is the beauty of it. If you're able to cracking it is difficult because you have to develop that confidence. But once you crack it, it becomes a long-term engagement. Unlike some of the other countries where they look at short-term profits only. Rather than that, Germans are long-term partners with whom you can really develop and grow also with the passage of time.
So you gave a couple of two very important hints there, which I don't think anybody will find anywhere. So commitment. So it's not just making a promise, but fulfilling the promise. So that's one thing.
Absolutely.
So while we take orders, we need to ensure that we have the capacity and the capability to deliver in time. That's commitment. And the second term is a long-term outlook. So it's quite important. So I think, so these are the two value stuff that one needs to have. Now, I know as you talked about that one thing that you regret or something that you did not pay that much, you wish you could have done that, spend more time in the family. So at your home, you have a physicist and your wife, Payal, who is also social entrepreneur, and your daughter Purvi, who is a brand strategist and psychologist as well. How do you navigate with them? How do you live with them at home? Like, how do you cope with them when you come back home?
No, I think my wife is an incredible lady, the work she's been doing, and with so much of commitment and passion, working in the social sector for 20 years, visiting the villages, working with the women in the village in very adverse circumstances, where in certain cases you don't even have proper toilets.
Yeah.
So I think hats off to my wife. I think I would never have been able to do that continuously for 20 years. And still that passion still burns very high in her to do more for the society, for the upliftment of women in the rural areas. Because India's growth story cannot be complete unless the rural India is also integrated in the growth story. And also my daughter, I'm really proud of her. It was her decision to come back from US, to come back to India, work with the same company. So I'm very proud of this decision she has taken. And I pray that all her dreams also be fulfilled. And she's very committed also to her work. And I think she's taken the good points from both the parents and has evolved a step further. So I pray that she also has reaches the endeavors and all her dreams be fulfilled, Dr. Sanjeev.
And as you said, I think Indians are adaptive. So I think that proves a point from US to come to India, living in Mumbai and trying to adapt. So what kind of conversations do you have on the dinner table then? So do you talk about these things or do you talk about something else?
I think dinner table is more talking about a little lighter topics, entertainment, movies and all. I think we all share a certain passion for interest in watching movies, good movies. So I think that is certainly one point which and then of course my wife has a lot of stories and experiences of her experiences in the rural areas or dealing with the rural community. For example, I think a small anecdote I would like to share. In a village where she was working, all the work stopped suddenly because somebody's goat got stolen in the village. So the whole ladies got involved in trying to search for the goat that got stolen in that. So these are small, where in the urban society, we cannot even imagine that this can be a reason for work being stopped over 2 days. There's no work happening.
But that's a community feeling.
Absolutely.
And a community is so important.
Yeah.
So I think the great work comes from the great relaxation as well. So what's your downtime? So how do you relax? What do you do when you're not doing anything?
Right.
And how often do you take time off from the work?
Right.
Can you talk about that? What do you do?
So certainly, over the weekend I try to do some cooking, Dr. Sanjeev. Especially grilling. I like to grill, so I try to do that over the weekend. And now I've also developed the passion for wine.
Wow!
So presently, in fact, I'm the president of the Bangalore Wine Club, and trying to increase my knowledge about wines, trying to understand more about wines. So my wife and myself, we recently did a wine tour of Italy. Also, we've done Croatia also earlier. So that's a new passion or hobby I've developed about wines.
What's your favorite wines?
So I would say from the grape, I would say, of course, the Tuscany wines are really very, I quite enjoyed the Tuscany wine. And especially in the Tuscany area, Sangiovese grapes, those are really very popular. And I think that is where I've developed a sort of a taste for the red wine also.
Tuscany is beautiful.
That's right.
Beautiful place. I remember even the bread that they serve there, the pizza, not just pizza, the different kind of breads is delicious.
That's right.
So as we all know that passion is important, work is important, but taking time for yourself is that important as well. What's your advice to young entrepreneurs, young people, also people in general about taking time off and relaxing as well? What do you want to say to them?
I think it's very important to have a right work-life balance. Unfortunately, in India, we don't see the importance of that work-life balance. Whereas in European countries, it's very strongly propagated, and in fact, even the companies encourage that. So taking a little time out of the work is very essential. Now, this could be various. For example, I personally also like to go for walks. Just going for a walk, long walk, helps me to de-stress. I met a friend yesterday. In fact, he's got a passion for, he's got bikes. So he, on Sunday, he says he does almost 400 to 500 kilometer on his motorbike. So that's totally a different passion. Of course, he's much younger than me.
You're still young.
So I think, but it's very important, or be it just watching a movie, for example. Even my wife and myself do that whenever on a weekend, just watch a good movie either on Netflix or Amazon. But it's, I think, reading again or music. Many people have music. Unfortunately, I have not developed any talent for music, but then I think it's a very de-stressing possibility also. But whatever your de-stress mechanism is, it is important that you have a certain me time, I think, where you can cut yourself off from the work and either spend time with friends or with the family, whatever gives you relaxation.
I think very true. I don't know who said it, but somebody said, great work comes from the deep relaxation. So relaxation is as important as just going out full on. You have a long career. Do you reflect back on your career sometime? And if you reflect, whenever you reflect back, like in your weekends and all, what comes to your mind? How has this journey been? Not just VDMA. How has this journey been? What has been your highs? What has been your lows?
I think I've been very fortunate. God has been kind, Dr. Sanjeev. I've had more highs than lows, I would say. Certainly one of the highs or one of the highlights of my career till now has been the Cross of the Order of Merit, which I got from the German government, because it is sort of the highest civilian honor given by the German government. So receiving that was sort of a very fulfilling experience, that recognition of the work that I've been doing over the years, bringing the German and the Indian industry together. So I think that certainly stands out as one of the highlights of the career. Of course, I must also compliment my colleagues with whom I've worked throughout this career. I think I've had excellent colleagues still. The team is very dedicated, very focused towards achieving what we have to achieve as a team. And although we are a small team here at VDMA, but if you see the number of events and activities we undertake, so I'm very proud of the team what we have, and also my ex-colleagues. I think I've learned a lot from my ex-colleagues also, who have over the process left the organization, but then they always carry the good reputation of the organization in their work when they reflect in the work. So it has been a very I would say a very happy journey till now. Also, this networking with our member companies, I think this has been a huge learning for me, meeting such senior people from the industry, spending time with them, interacting with them, gaining knowledge from their experience. So it's been a very enriching journey till now, Dr. Sanjeev.
And what a journey it has been. And I must say, that's not just an award for yourself, but we as an Indian, we should be also proud of that award, and it is reflection and acknowledgement of the hard work that you have put to bring these two countries together and give the confidence when the market wasn't that big. And that's the key part. So I think, so we all know from you, who are you, what you do, but what do we not know about you? So who is, so let's say when you sit down with your friends or from childhood friends, who is Rajesh Nath, who others do not know? But it's an important thing for others to know. What would you say?
I think there's not so much of a difference in my life. I used to be the school monitor when I was in school also. So, but what I really like to, which also partially I think reflects in my career, is meeting people. Right. So even in my free time, I think what I really like is meeting old friends, coming together with old friends, or even in fact meeting new friends. So this characteristic is something similar which I drag on to my work also. But I think behind the scene also, it is quite similar to what you see in front of the screen.
I think you have a great energy. I must say, I've seen you in one of the conference, the energy level at 9 a.m. and the 9 p.m. And I didn't see much difference in that. So that's for us to really learn from that. And as a businessman, as what you talked about, that resilience, the adaptability, the commitment, these are the key things, and having a mindset, which is important. So I think we are coming to the end of this wonderful conversation. I can go on about it because there's so much for us to learn, and there's so much for us as individuals to learn. There's so much for Indian manufacturers to learn from this conversation. There's so much for foreign companies to learn as well, that what they need to do to expand in India, what Indian companies need to do to become more efficient, competitive, and grow their business. But yes, we're coming to the end. So I'll have a rapid fire round. It won't be long. It will be 2 minutes. Few questions that will help us to know a little bit more about yourself. So your favorite sport?
I would say cricket, certainly cricket.
Your favorite cricketer?
I was quite this thing of Kapil Dev. I think what he did for the Indian cricket has been amazing, taking it with the World Cup win. That really highlighted India on the international scenario in cricket and gave us the confidence that as a nation we can really achieve, despite of being underdogs when we won the World Cup in 1983. So my salute to Kapil Dev for giving us that belief that we can achieve.
Certainly, he did. Your favorite movie?
I would say there's a very touching movie. Life is Beautiful.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that I think is really touches my heart whenever I see that movie.
One word to describe Indian manufacturing?
I would say resilient and go-getters, despite of so much challenges. What the manufacturing has been able to achieve, amazing.
I couldn't agree more. Automation or craftsmanship? Which one would you prefer?
I would say automation leading to better lives for craftsmen. That would be my ideal take, Dr. Sanjeev.
One book that you wish every manufacturer should read?
Right. So recently I came across this book. A good friend of mine has written The Change Makers in Indian Manufacturing. Mr. Harishankar has written this book. And I must, I was really, I think the entrepreneurs he has covered, the small companies, how they have grown, under what struggles they have grown. It is really a very interesting book. And I think, especially for the Indian MSMEs, I think this is really a book one should read and go through the individual stories that have been covered in that.
Yeah, certainly. I think it's a fantastic book. In a busy day, tea or coffee?
Coffee. Staying in Bangalore, I think coffee is what I've really developed the taste for.
Absolutely. And in a busy day, or say on a daily routine, what one thing in a normal daily life, what one thing you wish could be automated?
I think if we have a better, especially in Bangalore, the traffic system, somehow if we have a better control on the traffic system through correct automation and the signaling system, if we could improve on that, I think that would really help and save time for the Bangaloreans.
I'm sure all Bangaloreans would vouch for that. And what is one myth about Indian manufacturing?
I think the myth that we are not capable of producing quality. I think that we have changed that myth. That we are able, as Indians, Indian manufacturing is able to give high quality products now. And with the Indian manufacturing going global, I think this myth we have been largely able to change the perception.
So with that strong note on the quality of manufacturing in India, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank Mr. Rajesh Nath for giving this time. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev. Pleasure being part of this show. Thank you.
Sir.